There are few places in the world where life is as densely packed as in a coral reef. While they only take up a tiny fraction of the space out in the big blue, these colourful aquatic cities are of the most diverse and fiercely competitive ecosystems on the entire planet. Corals may look like plants, but they are in fact colonies of small invertebrate animals called polyps. A typical polyp only grows to a couple of centimeters long, with a mouth at the top and an exoskeleton at its base. By reproducing asexually to produce clones, a colony of identical polyps will eventually grow into the recognizable structures we see as corals. Most species also rely on a symbiotic relationship with algae. In return for a safe place to live provided by the coral's skeleton, the algae provide nutrients for the polyps through photosynthesis. Plants get their green colour from photosynthesizing, as the chlorophyll pigments involved absorb red and blue light for the reaction, while green wavelengths are reflected. Corals, however, don't have the same access to red light, as it's absorbed very quickly by water. And so, polyps often contain fluorescent pigments that absorb blue light and re-emit wavelengths on the red side of the spectrum, which the symbiotic algae then use for photosynthesis. The end result is that corals can come in a wide variety of vibrant colours. They also provide shelter for thousands of species of small fish, most of which are equally as vibrant in order to blend in or to deter predators. Seahorses are some of the best at camouflaging in the reef, as they can change not only the colour, but also the texture of their skin by raising and lowering the spines that reside underneath. They use their long tails to anchor themselves onto corals or plants and prey on any passing small creatures like shrimp. They also wrap their tails around each other during courtship dances, and unlike most animals, when mating, female seahorses will actually insert their eggs into a pouch on the male's body, where they're fertilized, incubated, and provided nutrients by the father until they hatch. When he releases them from his pouch, like most fish, he will not nurture them any further. Some litters can be over 1,000 strong, but seahorses need these kinds of numbers, because aside from excellent camouflage, they are pretty defenseless against predators. They swim upright and very slowly, only propelling themselves with a single dorsal fin. The dwarf seahorse is in fact the slowest swimming fish on the planet, with a top speed of around 1.5 meters per hour. Most other small fish rely on their speed and size to avoid attacks by dashing through or hiding within the tight spaces of a reef. However, some rely on venom, like pufferfish, which can inflate themselves into a large intimidating ball of spikes. This deters many predators from attacking, as if they do, they may choke on such a large and spiky meal, and may also be vulnerable to the puffer's poison. Many species can also change colour, but unlike the seahorse, they don't use this ability for camouflage. Rather, they remain bright and obvious to predators, signalling that they are not worth eating. Clownfish don't produce venom of their own, but rely on that of stinging anemones, where they make their homes. For most clownfish, their choice of home is species-specific, as they develop a mucus that covers their scales and makes them immune only to their anemone's stings. The anemones provide shelter from predators as well as a safe nursery to lay their eggs on, and in return the fish keep the anemone clean and free of parasites. Clownfish families have a strict hierarchy, headed by a large female who is the only one in the group and only mates with the most dominant male. They're hermaphroditic, all originally hatching as males, and only if the family loses its current female will the dominant male change sex and become the new leader. Most fish communicate with lights and colour signals, but clownfish use a variety of clicking sounds to verbally talk to one another. They've been observed talking to facilitate teamwork, to deter and alert each other of predators, to confirm and enforce their ranks within the family, which prevents fighting, and there's probably many other reasons yet to be discovered. With language, social hierarchy, and symbiotic relationships with other species, clownfish are not so different from ourselves, so perhaps it's time we reconsider our judgment on the intelligence of fish. That being said, some of the most intelligent animals in the reef are in fact cephalopods, like octopuses, squids, and cuttlefish, which communicate with light as well as altering the texture of their skin, and of course with body language. Some cuttlefish have been observed displaying two entirely unique signals at once. In particular, a male will display courtship signals to a female, while on the other side of his body attempts to appear as though he himself is a female, preventing rivals from fighting him. However, this acute control of appearance isn't just for communication, it also provides an extremely effective camouflage, often good enough to fool even human eyes, which can be used to ambush prey as well as hide from their own predators. In addition, they can also intimidate by making themselves brightly coloured, and can use vibrant patterns to lure, mesmerise, or even hypnotise their prey, making for easy catches. Just like squid, cuttlefish have two hidden tentacles, which dart out at high speed to make the catch, while octopuses have all 8 of their arms on display and lunge on top of their prey in order to capture it. Perhaps the master of intimidation in the reef is the lionfish. There are currently 12 identified species, and they all share a similar appearance, with long spines and bright red and white patterns. The spines provide a large profile and an awkward shape for predators to approach, which works as a similar deterrent to a pufferfish's inflation, and the bright colours are an indication that these spines are highly venomous. It's unlikely to be lethal, but a healthy human adult will very likely suffer nausea, extreme local pain and swelling, vomiting, and a strong fever upon being stung. However, these fish do not sting their prey. They hunt at night to cover their vibrant colours, and their strategy is to corner prey with their large pectoral fins, as well as blowing jets of water to confuse or turn them around. Many fish cannot swim backwards, making a target that faces you far easier to catch. Their diet is extremely varied, including dozens of different small fish and crustaceans, some of which play integral roles in the reef's ecosystem. This wouldn't be a problem if their numbers were few, but lionfish also reproduce with large litters all year round, as well as having very strong defences against their predators, which are few to begin with. As a result, lionfish have become a huge natural threat to coral reefs, especially those in the Atlantic where they are not native. However, there may be a solution. Moray eels are some of the most powerful predators in the reef, the largest of which grow to around 1.5 meters long. They are typically ambush hunters, using their slender bodies to hide within holes and tight spaces, and their vibrant patterns to camouflage with the corals. Many species have unconventional teeth that are reminiscent of broken glass, being transparent, razor-sharp, and unevenly spaced. Weirder still, morays also have two sets of jaws. Inside its throat is a smaller, internal set that grips onto captured prey and manually pulls it down towards the stomach. It's believed that they developed this trait because the restricted movement in their hunting grounds prevents them from creating the pressure gradient that most fish use in order to swallow. To slip through tight spaces without being hurt, morays are covered in a thick layer of slime that protects their skin from abrasive cuts and bruises, as well as any venomous spines they may brush past. And so, with venom resistance and a strong size and strength advantage, moray eels are very capable of taking down lionfish. However, they may still avoid them due to unfamiliarity, as lionfish are invasive in many reefs outside of Indo-Pacific regions. But there are ongoing human efforts to teach morays that lionfish are an appropriate food source, commonly by divers spearing lionfish and holding them outside a moray's den. Progress is slow, and many morays reportedly only attack small or injured lionfish, which could be because of their excellent intimidation, or because the eels are learning the wrong lesson from humans. Instead of learning that lionfish are food, they learn that divers have food they're willing to give up, which makes them more dangerous to swim with and doesn't solve anything. Nonetheless, moray eels are some of the most impressive predators in the whole ocean, and could yet still prove to be a natural solution to the lionfish problem. Only time will tell. On the outskirts of the reef, where corals are few and far between, life is far less busy and competitive. Garden eels, which are far smaller than morays, reside here in large colonies, sometimes in the thousands. They dig themselves little burrows, which they rarely leave, only poking their heads out of the sand in order to catch plankton that drift by. When startled, they quickly retreat into their burrows, which protects them from most predators. However, snake eels have proven to be one of their top predators, as they too bury themselves under the sand, and can therefore attack them from below, catching an unsuspecting garden eel by its tail. Although, staying close to or buried within the sand is still the safest place out here, as without corals and caves there is nowhere else to hide. Even some hunters like stingrays bury themselves in the sand when resting, to hide from their own predators. Blue-spotted stingrays rarely do this, and instead prefer to hide under corals or in other sheltered spots on the reef. Like all stingrays, they have stingers on their tails, which are used to defend against predators like sharks. And while it is common for venomous animals to be brightly coloured, the blue-spotted is quite unique among stingrays, as most are just brown or blue on the upper side and white underneath to help camouflage either on sandy beds or in the open water. Spotted eagle rays spend much of their time wandering the open sea. They're fast, agile swimmers and are known to leap entirely out of the water, which could be to rid themselves of parasites, although the real reason is not yet known. They often visit coral reefs and sandy shallows where they hunt for crustaceans and worms that hide underneath the seabed. Torpedo rays are not venomous, but have specialised organs on their heads that can deal powerful electric shocks to both predators and prey. They have much thicker tails than stingrays, with a fully realised caudal fin and 2 dorsal fins, as unlike stingrays they use their tails to propel themselves in a similar manner to a shark. They are slow-swimming ambush hunters that rely on their electric shocks to catch prey. The Atlantic torpedo ray is the largest of all the electric rays, growing up to 2 meters long and being capable of producing a shock upwards of 200 volts. Rays are close relatives of sharks, and Wobbegong sharks make that relation obvious. With large rounded pectoral fins, a shallow profile, and a slow, awkward swimming style, the Tasselled Wobbegong is similar in appearance to a torpedo ray, and is an excellent ambush hunter. During the day, it lies at the bottom of caves and tunnels within the reef, and lures prey into its den by slowly waving its tail, mimicking the movements of a small fish, which makes the cave look like a safe shelter. Its caudal fin even has a dark spot at the base to mimic the look of a fish's eye. Any that are fooled by the lure are snapped up with incredible speed. Other ambush hunters like angel sharks can lie in wait for days, waiting for prey to come near. However, the Tasselled Wobbegong is a hasty and impatient predator. In addition to its lure, it will leave its den at night to actively hunt for food, much like many other reef sharks. While the term reef shark can broadly mean any shark that lives in a coral reef, it commonly refers to 4 specific types of shark that are actually named reef sharks. They are the blacktip, whitetip, grey and Caribbean reef sharks, all of which can be found in coral reefs around the Pacific and Indian Oceans, except for the Caribbean reef shark, which lives in the West Atlantic off the coast of South and Central America. Like most sharks, blacktip reef sharks have to swim continuously in order to pass water over their gills. However, the other 3 are able to lie still, which is how they normally spend their days, as all reef sharks are more active and do their hunting at night. All of them are quite social, spending their days in large groups, and whitetip reef sharks sometimes even hunt together and spur into a frenzy when they catch prey. Reef sharks are generally the top predators of coral reefs. However, young or small individuals are vulnerable to moray eels, as well as larger oceanic sharks like tiger sharks. Blacktips are the most sheltered from predators, as they spend most of their time in the shallows close to shore, while grey and Caribbean reef sharks typically reside at reef drop-offs and venture further into the open water to find food. Whitetips normally reside resting in caves or other sheltered parts of the reef. They are also the smallest of the reef sharks and have unique spotted patterns on their sides that are unique to each individual, like a fingerprint. Zebra sharks are also covered in spots, but are far more distinctive. When fully grown, they are a similar size to a reef shark and have very few predators. When they're young, their skin is much darker and exhibits a pattern of stripes instead of spots, which is where they get their name from. They swim slowly and typically only prey on mollusks or crustaceans that hide in tight spaces or under the sandy seabeds. Perhaps the most aggressive hunters of the reef are barracudas, a genus of ray-finned fishes containing many species. They are ambush hunters that rely on surprise and a short burst of high speed to catch their prey. They usually reside near the surface of the water, commonly around reef drop-offs, but are known to venture both out into the open and far into the shallows. The largest of them is the great barracuda, commonly around a metre long. Adults are usually solitary and can reach a swimming speed of up to 36 miles per hour in a short burst. But the barracuda is just one of many visitors to the reef. Scalloped hammerhead sharks spend much of their time in the open water and are one of the most impressive predators in the ocean. They range in length from around 1.5 to 2.5 meters long, with females typically on the larger side while males are smaller. Their size alone protects them from most predators, but even then, these sharks often live in schools, providing safety in numbers from the few predators that could be a threat, like orcas. Their wide heads not only allow for a 360-degree field of vision, but are also filled with electroreceptors used to detect prey. It allows for a greater search area and increases the maneuverability of the shark, allowing it to take tighter turns than most, and therefore making escape very difficult for uncovered prey. Scalloped hammerheads gather in gigantic schools, sometimes in the hundreds, around coral reefs and rocky islands. They come here to mate and to be cleaned. Locals of the reef, like some shrimp and small fish, provide a cleaning service to larger animals like the hammerhead sharks. They pick off parasites, dead skin, and other afflictions the sharks may have, which is mutually beneficial, providing sustenance to the cleaners and improving the shark's health, perhaps both physically and mentally. Cleaner fish and shrimp often remain very local to a specific spot, known as a cleaning station, and some animals like sea turtles develop favourites and will always return to the same station whenever they are in need of a clean. Many cleaner fish and shrimp have a characteristic thick lateral stripe, usually bordered with white, and it's theorized that large animals recognize them as cleaners because of this appearance. Betrayals are very rare, even when cleaners venture inside their client's mouth, and it's incredible to think that this is a form of civil communication between species that would normally be predator and prey. And cleaning stations are far from the only case of symbiosis in coral reefs. Many inhabitants of these bustling cities have shown complex communication not only among themselves, but between different species altogether, to achieve better hunting, better protection, to establish and maintain a hierarchy, or in this case, to form a trust between creatures big and small, in order for them both to benefit. And with that, I'd say coral reefs, while crowded and competitive, are a form of civilization, and are therefore perhaps the most advanced ecosystems in the entire ocean.